On a hot mic yesterday talking to Governor Gretchen Whitmer, she appeared to acknowledge that she's not doing well with men.
Everyone's heard is that we need to move the background. Yeah. Oh, we have microphones and I was listening to everything. I didn't realize that. Okay. So, well,
You'll
now
bleep
you tell
my
us.
F words.
We just told all the family secrets.
I'm going to go ahead and just speak some truths, if you don't mind. Because my understanding, based on reports I'm getting from campaigns and communities, is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly.
Okay, folks, let's try to talk this out. I'm in no way trying to paint myself as any kind of victim, but I gotta be honest, it's getting a little sick out here, and I gotta explain. So, lately, every time I open up a social media app, what I'm seeing is a lot of black men getting their backs kicked in for one reason or another. And here lately has been the shaming and blaming of black men for not jumping on the Kamala Harris hope train. Even as a non-voter, my observations have somehow painted me as a supporter of the other side, which, I really got to just laugh at. Lack of perspective from a lot of people, they just jump to conclusions. What I want to offer you today is a little perspective on what's happening. I'll start with a question. Do you think it's possible that black men can be reasonable enough to hear a candidate out and just not believe in what they're trying to sell us? Seriously, what about this will persuade you to come to the table with your support held high?
Thanks so much for dropping by this evening.
Of course.
Polling shows that a lot of people, especially independent voters, really want this to be a change election, and that they tend to break for you in terms of thinking about change. You are a member of the President administration. Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I noticed.
And so that would be one change in terms of.
Yes.
But also, I think it's important to say with 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
I'm careful to stick to the topic at hand because the message can be easily misunderstood as an endorsement for Donald Trump. If we remove a little bit of critical thinking, that whole aspect, for the record, I find all of this to be really two things. On one hand, the candidates are alarming for their own reasons, but on the other hand, I find the appearances extremely entertaining. So I gotta just say that some of what's been happening has been very entertaining to me. I get it. This is the most important election of 2024. And yes, I said that correctly because we're kind of subjected to the same rhetoric every presidential election cycle. And the point has been driven home enough, but here's really where I'm struggling to even sympathize. For one, I see this as a popularity contest. And the candidates do, I believe the candidates do as well, which is why they resort to cheap tactics like what I consider the Pander Olympics. And then, of course, we have the ceremonious celebrity appearances to appeal to those who may be on the fence, may be swayed by a talented singer or actor's political endorsement, as if being gifted in some area of entertainment somehow qualifies your stamp of approval more than the next citizen. Let's be serious. This has been an absolute circus. But with one candidate, we've already kind of adjusted to the sideshow. We know what to expect. And since some of us are so convinced that we need something else, it would be a good idea to turn our attention to a current vice president that we know very little about. Is she black? Is she Native American? Is she Indian?
The journalist says that Kamala Harris has always identified herself as a black woman. But here's a clip. I'll just play it.
Yeah, this is the press. Tom, rewind, please.
Rewind.
Go back a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to cook today is an Indian recipe.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you are Indian.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that, but I find that wherever I go and I see Indian people at the supermarket, on the street, everyone's like, you know Kamala Harris is Indian, right? It's like the thing we're so excited about to have you running for president.
Yeah.
So we're both Indian,
Yes.
but actually we're both South Indian.
Yes. You look like the entire one half of my family.
Okay, thank you.
You do.
I've been telling people
You
we're
do.
related already,
Yeah.
so this is perfect. It's basically true. And so, were you raised eating South Indian food?
South Indian food.
Isn't that weird though? Isn't it weird that she's been Indian this whole time?
Does that even matter? I would think so once you make that a part of the material you use to run your campaign on. And now that people want to do some research on who you are, suddenly that makes them the enemy. That's weird. There's a huge problem with a candidate that people never selected to run on the Democratic ballot in the first place, winning people over, and it's a very simple one. Never have you ever heard her answer a direct question.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a
which
number.
is-
Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your
And-
Homeland Security Secretary said that
Well, no,
85%
but
of
I'm not
apprehensions.
finished. I'm not finished. We have
It's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of
system
6 million people
that
have been
needs to be-
released into the country.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed.
So you
We're
do
able to
support
make
restrictions
those-
after viability?
I support Roe versus Wade being put back into law by Congress and to restore the fundamental right of women to make decisions about their own body. It is that basic.
But you know, there are restrictions. With Roe versus Wade, there were restrictions after viability.
We would not be debating this if Donald Trump had not hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
Once again, not a yes or a no there.
It's like her kryptonite. Like, will she lose her superpowers if that ever happens? Like, come on. Like, I want to understand, but this is ridiculous. As a Detroit native, I'm extremely proud of the work that a fellow native has been able to accomplish on the ground and in the trenches, making his mark on the city and expanding his outreach beyond the city limits. If you're not familiar with Zeke of New Era, then here's a little sample.
Detroit looking to be proactive and pushing for a safe summer. They have this event planned for weeks, and the recent shootings of a 4-year-old and an 81-year-old underscore just how important and timely their message is.
I'm so sick and tired of the streets, I don't know what to do. Just the other day, we had somebody shoot up a house full of kids.
It's almost becoming as common in Detroit as conies and buffs. Kids paying the price for grown-up beefs. A 4-year-old boy was shot in a drive-by on the city's west side Wednesday as he was lying in bed. Later that day, an 81-year-old man was shot while trying to apologize to another man he nearly struck with his car. The violence spared neither the young nor old in this city. New Era Detroit is asking yet again, when will enough be enough?
I'm saying on some real though, Detroit, how we letting kids get killed in the way that we've been letting them get killed?
Isaiah Zeke Williams posed that question to a crowd of roughly 50 people at the corner of 7 Mile and Gratiot Thursday, as he and others urged Detroiters to play their part in making sure the most vulnerable among us don't fall victim to violence.
Stop rapping if you ain't helping.
We don't want to hear nothing about where you from or what hood you claim if you're not helping your environment level up.
Okay, now stay with me because there's a reason why I brought him into the conversation. For one, Zeke has earned a reputation for being a man about his community. Putting action before talk or pandering and just exemplifying leadership, and also extending an open invitation to the citizens of Detroit to really join a movement greater than themselves. Also recently had an opportunity to ask our presidential candidate Kamala Harris, or Kamala, excuse me, a direct question of his own. And you care to guess how that went?
Zeke, he's the president and CEO of New Era Detroit. He wants to talk to you about your blackmail agenda for the black community, or just your agenda for the black community, period. Zeke, what's up, brother?
What up, though? What up, though? Madam Vice President Charlamagne the God. What up, though, and welcome to Detroit.
Yes, sir.
It's good to be back.
I like to say the real Detroit because I'm up in here. My name is Zeke, New Era founder and CEO. I've worked on the ground here in Detroit and in black communities all across the country for over the past 10 years, actually celebrating our 10th year this past August.
All right.
In my 10 years of organizing, we played a major role in the resurgence of pride and a change in mindset in Detroit neighborhoods across the city.
Mm-hmm.
We're not only known for the work that we do here in Detroit, but across the country in black communities, having worked in over 35 cities of the blackest cities in America. Saying all that to say, I'm extremely qualified to sit in front of the current vice president and which can be the next president of the United States of America. As I pose my question to you, I would first like to make it known that I don't have any emotional connections to politicians. I believe that this is one of our biggest flaws in the current political process. I view politics as a business, and America is one of the biggest corporations in the world. With that being said, I'm here on behalf of the business of the black community. With all that black Americans have been through and contribute to the success of America, I feel that there should be an in-depth investigation or evaluation of the lack of resources and current living conditions in black communities nationwide. My question to you is, what's your stance on reparations? We all know that America became great, off the backs of free black labor. How progressive are you on making it a priority and righting America's wrongs? It's understood that you are running for president for all people of America. Asking for specifics for black communities doesn't mean don't do for others, but black Americans are heavily asked to vote Democrat in every election for over half a century with very little in return. What are your plans to address these very important issues and change that narrative?
Thank you, Zeke.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your work. So to your point, yes, I am running to be a president for all Americans. That being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position. In terms of my immediate plan, I will tell you a few of the following. One, as it relates to the economy, which is a lot of what you have addressed. Look, I grew up in the middle class. My mother, worked hard, raised me and my sister, and
by the time I was in high school, she was able to afford our first home. I know what it means for an individual and a family to have home ownership. I also know, in the context of history, nobody got 40 acres and a mule. We have a history of a number of things, including redlining. Detroit knows it well. A history of, for example, something that still exists that I've worked on to address, which is racial bias in home appraisals. And we know home ownership is, black families are 40% less likely to be homeowners than others. And that home ownership is one of the surest ways to build intergenerational wealth, right? Because when you own a home, that's when if your child says, Daddy, I want to go to college, you can say, sweetheart, don't have to take out a loan. I'll take some equity out of the house. Or if your child says, I want to start a small business, same point, right? So my plan includes making sure that for first-time home buyers, they have a $25,000 down payment assistance to just get their foot in the door, because we know folks will work hard, they'll save, and pay that monthly mortgage. Second point is to bring down the cost of housing generally, because one of the issues is we have a housing supply shortage, and so that's about working with the private sector. In terms of our small businesses, which are part of the backbone of the economy of the black community and part of the backbone of America's economy writ large. My second mother, the woman who helped raise us, was a small business owner. I know who our small business owners are, and I have convened black small business owners way before I was running for president in my official office at the White House to talk with young entrepreneurs, mostly young, about the work that they are doing that is about clean energy work, technology, as well as the traditional, whether it be a barbershop or a restaurant. One of the big issues facing black entrepreneurs and black small businesses is access to capital. Because unlike my opponent, who got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, don't forget that, calls himself a businessman, not everybody has access to the capital, but we know in the community we do not lack for ambition, aspirations, dreams, hard work ethic. And so my work has been as vice president to increase billions of dollars into community banks. And as vice president, part of that work will also be to change the tax deduction for startup small businesses from $5,000 to $50,000. Because nobody can start a small business on $5,000. And if you don't otherwise have intergenerational wealth, how are you going to be able to do it? Second point on small business is this. I'm going to do, basically, it's a program that is about a $20,000 non-refundable loan to to basically businesses that don't have access to wealth and don't have those relationships, which is going to directly impact a lot of black-owned small businesses. That $20,000 non-refundable loan is what would help somebody if they need to buy equipment, right? If they need to buy an extra truck, depending on what that business is, which we know that's a big part of what holds back our small businesses. Just having enough capital to actually pay for the things that allow you to then put your hard work into play to actually grow your business. The other piece, and this is something that is critically important, is to see black folks, and in particular black men, as a whole human being. And understand that we are talking about sons, we are talking about fathers, we are talking about grandsons, we're talking about grandparents, we're talking about uncles. And so I say that as a preface to say 2 other things, and then I'll keep going. One, to deal with, I mean, you like that? You caught that.
Okay, filibuster, ma'am. Go.
To deal with health care for black people and black men in particular. We know that we still have a lot of work to do to increase, for example, the high risk that we have for colon cancer, for prostate cancer, right? And to increase screenings and to make sure that people are actually going to get the screenings. Not to mention the higher risk for sickle cell. So part of my agenda is about what we will do to deal with and highlight what we've got to do to focus on black men's health. And then a similar point is this. 40% of caregivers are men. And we know culturally we take care of our elders. And we have a lot of men in the community who are in the sandwich generation, who are trying to take care of their young kids and take care of an elder parent or relative. And it's overwhelming for people to be able to do both. And a lot of people have to end up thinking about leaving their job to just do it.
That's right.
So my plan is this. One, in order for people to then afford assistance for hiring health care, home health care, they basically have to go broke to be eligible for Medicaid. My plan is this. Let's have Medicare, and this is, I've mapped it out and we can make it work. Medicare cover the cost of home health care for seniors, which means that you are looking at individuals in the context of their whole family. Because what we know is, again, understanding the culture, understanding the reality, lots of people are having to leave work in order to do that. So these are some examples of my agenda. And overall, it is an agenda that understands, by the way, because we've talked already a lot about criminal justice, that the needs of the black community are not just about criminal justice.
We need that money.
It's about, because here's the thing. We have brought down black unemployment, I said this earlier, to one of the lowest levels in history. But I'm very clear. The community is not going to stand up and applaud just because everybody has a job. That should be a baseline. My agenda is about tapping into the ambitions and the aspirations, knowing that folks want to have an opportunity. If they want, they should have a meaningful opportunity to build wealth, including intergenerational wealth. And that's my agenda.
I don't want to be unfair, so I took the time to draw my own conclusions based on nothing but listening to our Madam Vice President. And once I identified what was frustrating me about her, that's when I started to notice that not just black men, but a lot of people share the same opinion.
Harris is here in Michigan touting jobs that came out of investments under Biden, including the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. And the largest super PAC supporting her is warning she's got to shift her strategy away from attacking Trump's character. The New York Times obtained 2 emails from Future Forward and, quote, attacking Trump's fascism is not that persuasive, read one line in bold type in the email, which is known as a Doppler and sent on a regular basis. Trump is exhausted isn't working either, read another. But Harris does not seem eager to get into detailed policy discussions when she's pressed.
I use him for that. I mean, she is so obscure. I don't really understand what she stands for and what she wants. It changes. My motives, are still the same. What? I'm confused. So maybe if he went out there, it would help.
Listen to priceless.
Madam Vice President, can you give us a sense of your internal polling at the campaign and how that is making or influencing your decisions on what to do over the next 9 days?
So, to be very frank with you, my internal polling is my instinct.
Her instincts.
Well, that explains a lot.
It sure does.
Wow. I wonder what it's like to be on her staff and always go by her whims. It's probably why we had joy for a while and now we have hate. I mean, we couldn't even progress to dislike. Hate for Donald Trump. And by the way, you said it, hate for half the country for those who support him. Might be more than half. We don't know. We'll have to see what happens on Election Day. I am starting to wonder, just in this divide with Joe Biden, how much of this also is, do you really want to sit down with the guy who had more votes in certain categories than you can get in the polling right now? Do you want to take a lecture from Joe Biden on how to win back the black vote? I mean, I can imagine acrimony is one way to put it. But we've seen her go from joy to hate. Maybe it's stronger than acrimony.
Instincts over internals. Is instincts over internals what got us the unserious vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz, rather than the highly popular governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro?
Right. And we all thought that it was the polling that was having her change all of her positions on all these different things. But it's her instincts that has her flip-flopping all over the place and then going on TV and saying, my values have never changed. I think that America actually wants to break up with both of them, and they are sensing it. I think Harris is more aware of Biden's unpopularity with the public than Biden is.
Like, based on her consistency when it came to how she was answering the questions or not answering the questions, really have to wonder how she was so successful as a prosecutor. Maybe that sort of evasive approach suited her in the former position, but as a presidential candidate, there are people that want to know who you are, and I'm doing my best to leave the racial aspect out of it just for the sake of everybody. But people also want to know where you stand. Somehow, in her attempts to make an impact with her public appearances, the black man became the scapegoat. But maybe, just maybe, she dug her own grave.
So Beyonce went up, spoke for a couple of minutes, and then left, and the place went crazy. They booed the hell out of everybody. They thought she was going to perform. Now, I would have no interest in that, but they said, and what happened is my opponent got up and started speaking. They booed the hell out of her. It's crazy. So they have to use people to get people to come, and then they send buses. We don't send buses. Everybody comes. We're just going to make America great again. It's very simple.
Thinking about sitting out or even supporting somebody who has a history of denigrating you because you think that's a sign of strength, because that's what being a man is, putting women down. That's not acceptable.
I don't really have the capacity to tolerate a stern talking to or chastisement from the former president, Barack Obama, or his mama, or anything regarding the matter, because if you want my vote, it's your responsibility to give me a reason to do so. Fighting for the rights of women to control what happens with their bodies is, I think, commendable. I don't have any argument with you standing on that side of things. I find zero issue with that, actually. Maybe philosophical differences on the premise, but okay, tax credits for parents and first-time home buyers and small business entrepreneurs. But the question is, what does that have to do with black men directly?
Well, Barack Obama last week had a pretty strong message toward African American men. Do you see that as a problem in 2024?
Bill, honestly, it actually broke my heart because to me it was so blatant as to what it was. First of all, it really was a scolding. And again, that's something that there was a man in a parking lot that we were talking to yesterday. We had the Trump bus out there, and he came up and he said, I can't repeat what he said actually, and he was livid. He said, why is he talking down to us? Don't scold us. Where have you been? Coming off of Martha's Vineyard and then lecturing us when it's convenient? So to me, it is very disturbing. The problem is he and they have gotten away with this kind of rhetoric for years. Mm-hmm. It's just that now they haven't been able to back anything up. And now you come in at the very last second, right? 3 weeks before the election, and now you all of a sudden are going to tell us how to vote? Stop it. And to me, I was refreshed, I think, you guys, to hear these voters, happen to be black men and women who I was talking to yesterday, say, no, we're not idiots. We see what you're doing. We see your timing. Back off.
How are you addressing black men other than shaming them for not drinking the Kool-Aid? This cheap tactic is really obvious to me, and sort of related to the Lil Wayne topic. How all of a sudden, out of the sky, one day, this was just a topic about the Super Bowl. All of a sudden, everybody online is arguing over whether Lil Wayne deserves to be a performer at the Super Bowl. It's pretty obvious to me when these topics are just dropped on the people. I think it's very tactical. I think there's a reason why that happens. And nobody seems to ever ask the question of where did that even come from? Because when did this become a thing? So, PSYOPs, another story.
I never noticed before and make me go, whoa. This is one of them, all right? This is the Democratic margin among black men under the age of 45 in presidential elections. You go back to November of 2012, what do you see? You see Obama by 81. Clinton only won him by 63. Then we're all the way down to Biden last time around by 53. A tremendous drop already. And then you take a look at the average of the most recent polls, and Kamala Harris is up by only 41 points. That is about half the margin that Obama won them by back in November of 2012. And this, I think, is, when Barack Obama goes in last week when he was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, essentially talking to young black men, He made it seem like it was a Kamala Harris specific problem. This is part of a long-standing trend of young black men moving away from the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris is just the latest to face that magnitude of younger black men going towards the Republicans.
That was most interesting here is the trend line and where some of the biggest drops happened or already happened in this case. How about black men overall?
How about black men overall? It's part of the same picture. You know, we're looking once again, if younger black men, it looks like the worst Democratic performance since 1960, since JFK versus Richard Nixon. It's the same thing among black men overall. Again, part of a similar trend, but here actually the drop-off isn't as dramatic, right? Barack Obama won him by 85. Then you see 71 with Clinton, 69. Biden, basically the same thing, holding steady. But here, again, very, very weak. Only a 54-point margin. Now, again, still winning him by a large margin, but considerably lower than what we're used to. Certainly considerably lower what we had during the Obama years with black women than she is doing among black men. But here, there isn't a trend line almost until we get to Kamala Harris. So again, this is a black margin among black women. Look, Obama won him by 93, very large margin. Clinton won him by 93, a very large margin. Biden did a little bit worse at 85. But then you look here and you get a 71-point margin. Now, again, these are large margins, but the bottom line is when you're talking about the base of the Democratic Party, you would think that Kamala Harris would do very well among black women based upon history. And of course, she would be the first black woman president, but she's actually doing the worst for a Democratic candidate among black women since 1960. If this
I want to ask you about that because we saw the Democrats kick an own goal when they sent Barack Obama out there to berate black men for not supporting Kamala. And now Michelle Obama is out there lecturing men. Let's play this clip from a rally in Michigan. This is how we should view men, apparently.
If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage. Prepared to look into the eyes of the women and children you love and tell them that you supported this assault on our safety?
And she also suggested that if you don't vote for Kamala, you are either racist or sexist.
What in the world is going on? And it's clear to me that the question isn't whether Kamala is ready for this moment, because by every measure, she has demonstrated that she's ready. The real question is, as a country, are we ready for this moment?
She went on to demand that men put aside their anger and vote for Kamala. And she also suggested that women should demand their men do better and back Kamala. Will that messaging work, or is it just preaching to the converted?
It's so amazing. I mean, can you imagine asking for somebody's vote by telling them your only role here is to shut up and become subservient to some other group? Now, that's insulting enough on its own. But bear in mind that the last 40 years of Democratic policy has taken the jobs of American men of all races who are working class and either shipped them overseas, defunded vocational training, or imported an entire slave caste to do construction work. So first they sold these men out. They made it impossible for them to support a family on a single income. Then they called them toxic if they dared protest and say, wait a minute, maybe a society needs strong men. No, that's toxic masculinity. And now to put the cherry on the cake, they're telling them, shut up, support women, or we will call you sexist and racist. And the worst part of this is that this election is pitting the real urgent concerns of working class men over fake, made up concerns of college educated and rich women. Why is Michelle Obama, one of the last people on planet Earth who will ever need an abortion, out there saying her life is in danger and all of these women's lives are in danger? They're not in danger. Donald Trump promised to veto a national abortion ban. They made up this concern, this issue, because it allows billionaire and millionaire women to pretend that they are the oppressed because somehow they are related tangentially to a woman who might need a 9th-month abortion for some reason, right? It is all about who gets to LARP as the oppressed. That's basically what they're doing here.
Honestly, for once, I would love for the public at large to just be able to give black men the credit we deserve for being intelligent beings capable of critical thinking. You all have an idea of the challenges we face in certain spaces, and yet we've still been able to figure it out this far. I don't need to list all the examples because really the point is, despite the constant media barrage of insults and skewed coverage of us on a regular basis, still we rise. Okay? I think it will be in any potential candidate's benefit to govern themselves accordingly. We are here, we matter, and we'll always be more than a proverbial doormat for you to walk over. I want to thank Madam Vice President Kamala Harris for all the material she provided to help me to make my points clear. To anyone who may not have understood beforehand, as a representative, I stand in and try to use examples of others to clearly show the bias and really paint a broader picture for what I consider to be a fair assessment and judgment of the presidential candidate. I've heard the word exhausted used really an excessive amount of times in the last few weeks, but I want to borrow it just to drive a point home. Some of us are exhausted with the tone and the approach. It's pretty clear to me that, we are to be the built-in excuse for the Democratic candidate coming up short. And to that I say,
you gotta try harder.
Good night, America, and happy voting.
God bless America, and no place else.